This is Jennifer Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. You've heard me speak and see me write about the role of labor unions in this fight for our democracy. Well, there's no one better than the head of one of the unions that represents, frankly, the most employees that are affected by this, and that is Rushab Sanghvi. He is the head of the Association of Federal Government Workers, and he's here to talk to us about the role of unions. Rashab, welcome.
Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate it.
Tell me about the employees that you represent in the federal government. Who are they? How many of them are they? And what are the types of jobs they do?
Yeah, sure, Jen. So we have about 330,000 members, but we represent, because the federal government is an open shop, right? So we have to represent everyone, whether or not they pay dues, if they're in a bargaining unit. So we represent over 800,000 federal employees, and they range in positions. So, we represent scientists at NASA, we represent nurses at the VA. We represent engineers in the Army Corps of Engineers who build our dams, right? So it's all over the map. Any sort of aspect or facet of the federal government, we have members who we represent.
And because you represent so many employees, you have taken up many lawsuits on their behalf. How many total lawsuits are you involved with right now, or have you lost track?
I have kind of lost track, right? AFGE with its partners, I think we have about 8 active federal court lawsuits, sort of with respect to the new administration. There's other litigation that's been in the works, prior to January. And I'd note that we take up these lawsuits on behalf of our members, but not just our members, not just our employees, right? I think our leadership, our national president and our board of directors, they see AFGE and our members sort of as being at the forefront of this fight, right? We are the federal employees who serve this country. So we serve it, not only in good times, but in bad times. And we're fighting for all Americans. Our Social Security employees are fighting for the seniors whose checks they process. Our NIH members are fighting for the patients whose the research they're helping will support. So again, this is a fight for all federal employees, for all Americans, that I think our leadership wants to be involved in and is taking a lead in.
There are various specific acts that you are objecting to. The mass firing of probationary employees, the elimination of whole agencies. What is the overarching theory or the overarching problem you see with the new administration?
I think many see it, right? The problem is the administration is trying to eviscerate federal government, right? They want to destroy federal government and replace it with, Elon Musk's cronies. They want contractors, but not only, not the typical type of contractors. They're even attacking contractors, right? They're destroying grants. They're canceling contracts. They want to put in Doge, Elon Musk's crews, and create an entirely different country, a country that could not have been envisioned by, anyone who, any of the founders, let alone anyone, in present day.
And they want to do it unilaterally without the input of Congress, that, after all, has the power of the purse. When you file these lawsuits, you often get what are called TROs, for our non-lawyers out there, temporary restraining orders, basically an order saying, whatever you're doing, you got to stop, or whatever you're doing, you got to reverse. Are you confident that when you get these, that the federal government is complying with the court orders, both the letter and the spirit of them?
I wouldn't, so I don't know if I can say I'm confident. So far, we've, with some exceptions, they've been complying. There have been some, we've had to push back. In our case in San Francisco, we're pushing hard there, but there is a concern of what they will do in the future. As the pressure builds, we do have concerns about whether or not they will continue to comply. But so far, again, it's been a balancing act, and we've been putting pressure, but there hasn't been any major break at this point.
And the San Francisco case you refer to, the judge ordered the return of thousands of probationary employees, then learned that the administration was putting them on administrative leave and said, wait a second, this is not what I was talking about. You got to return them to work. And he did that last night, this morning. So that was a pretty unusual order that you get from someone like him. Obviously, this will go up through the appeals court. Some of these cases have already been appealed. Then they'll go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, at least in the immunity area, gave incredibly wide berth to the president, but that was criminal immunity. This is something different. What would you say if you were arguing specifically to the chief and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who appear to be the judges that would be the swing votes to decide this? What's the argument you would articulate to them about the misuse of federal power?
Yes, and so just to broadly speaking, and you touched on this earlier, right? A lot of what the administration is doing is defying the will of Congress, right? And as it implies to federal employees, and a lot of these agencies, Congress created these agencies, Congress imposed these protections on federal employees, right? And so, the very simple argument, and I think, and I believe and I hope, the Chief Justice and the others will understand is, there is an Article 1, there is an Article 2. There's a reason that, Article 1 comes first. There's also a reason that, if the president could usurp the authority of Congress in pretty much any way, what would the purpose of Article 1 be, right? And I hope, the justices will appreciate that, and I think they will. AFG has actually succeeded in cases before the Supreme Court in the past, right? And so, including this court, Justice Thomas wrote a decision in our favor, very recently. And so we are hopeful.
Taking a step back, it's often the case that wannabe dictators, authoritarians, attack labor unions. We saw that in Hungary, of course, during the Cold War, they were made illegal. We saw this with Bolsonaro in Brazil. Why do authoritarians go after unions? And conversely, why are unions so important in the fight for democracy?
I think, Jen, that's because, we represent worker power. We represent the everyday person, right? And I think it's essential for a want to be autocrat, right? To divide us, to divide, workers against each other, and we unify them. We stand for things that they, for their powers, for their ability to act collectively. And, that is a very powerful force. And I think, on the flip side, the reason it's important that unions are in this fight, and I'll note, even though AFGE has been bearing the brunt of the attack so far, we've had partners in labor, AFSCME, the union that represents state and municipal workers, and the whole AFL, the whole Federation of, labor, fight with us. It's because they understand, right? It's an attack on one of us is an attack on all. And, we're fighting for workers and for the average American.
And the other thing that you guys do, of course, is mobilize. That's your specialty. You get people together for collective action. So it's not only in the court of public opinion, but also, rather, it's not only in the court of law, it is also in the court of public opinion that you're very active. Talk to us a little bit about some of the activities you and your partners in the AFL are doing to mobilize the entire American public to inform them about what is going on.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot. So our legislative department has been on the Hill every day. Our organizers have been all over the country. And I think one of the things we think is important, and I think the rest of the movement it does as well, is how this is affecting everyday Americans, right? And so it's sharing the stories of our members, and not only the stories of how our members are affected, how, some of these attacks and unjust, unfair attacks are affecting their livelihoods, but how it's affecting the livelihoods of others. I think one of the best stories we had, and it's just one of thousands, is of a group of firefighters who had, switched careers. These are long-term, firefighters. They were chiefs of different fire departments. They had switched their careers to work for NIOSH. They decided, hey, we want
And
to.
that is,
Oh,
NIOSH is,
National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. I think I'm getting that acronym right, but it's part of HHS. And they had left their careers as firefighters to work for NIOSH to start research on preventing cancer in firefighters. This was this was a calling for them. They wanted to help their fellow firefighters to make sure that we were doing everything we can to prevent the incidence of cancer in firefighters. The entire congressionally funded program, most of the employees in that program were laid off during this cull of probationary employees, despite having amazing performance evaluations. And they came from states, from Kentucky, from Indiana. These are not progressive liberals, right? These are firefighters who want to help firefighters. And so just telling those stories, I think, is an important way to mobilize communities.
what can the average American do to help support labor unions? Maybe they're not a member of your union or even any other union that represents government employees. How can they show their support?
I think there's several ways. I think, the first way is, if you're not a member, but you're eligible to be a member of our union or any other union, join that union. I think the other thing is, tell your congressperson, right? And we've had that support. That's why the Republicans in many states are no longer holding town halls. So it's important that you show that support in town halls. And it's important that you talk about these issues with your friends and neighbors, and you tell them how you support unions, how you support workers. And so I think those are all very important ways that the people can support us.
And of course, you can all respect picket lines and you can all make consumer choices that are consistent with your values. Rashab, thank you so much for the work you're doing, and thank you for coming to tell us. I fear that sometimes the role of unions, which is so critical, particularly in this fight, does not get the attention that it deserves. So we're very happy to host you, and we'll look forward to having you back again.